Good morning. I'm Kathy Parker from Tuolumne County Superintendent of Schools Office.
And I'm Jeanette Spencer from Butte County Office of Education.
And we're here to present local indicator tools that are going to be used to evaluate progress toward meeting standards on Priority 2 and Priority 3. So a lot of the front slides on this section are going to be familiar because repetition is key to understanding how we're going to support districts in meeting which is a brand new system for them. And these are related specifically to the local indicator tools. And the two we're going to look at today are Priority 2, implementation of state standards, and Priority 3, parental involvement. Some vocabulary that we want to build upon. Again, this is a repetitious slide from previously, but that we do have some new folks in the room. So when we talk about a standard, we're talking about the description of the self-assessment in that priority. In evidence, we're describing the relevant data instruments that are used first for self-assessing, and the second part, reporting the progress relative to the standard. And the criteria that we're using is how we are making progress toward MET, which is a little different for our districts to, and for us as well, to grapple with. And we're looking at three indicators. We're looking at MET, not MET, and not MET for 2 years. Our local performance indicators are, using self-assessments and or a menu of self-assessment tools, and they're going to be provided with those self-assessment tools or a menu of tools as, and we'll report the progress on what we've added in here, which is the California School Dashboard, which will be revealed later this year. And then following that self-assessment, LEAs will be able to determine whether or not they have met the criteria, and what they are reporting is whether they have met, not met, or not met for 2 years. Getting to MET is the new piece that goes along with the local indicators. Again, we want to reiterate that the results of the self-evaluation is not what they're deciding on whether they've met or not met. There's actually a different way of looking at how to get to MET. They're looking at the engagement that was used in the process, the analysis that they used for the improvement, and the transparent reporting of those results and how they're incorporating those results into their plan. So it's not, again, about whether or not they've made progress on what they were hoping to make progress on. It's about whether they met the criteria. When we are looking at their results, when districts are looking at the results of their surveys, of their analysis of how they are doing on their local measures, they're probably going to want to take a look at their LCAP template and look at where the greatest need is, and that's an area that they can reflect upon for greatest need. Again, these will not be on the dashboard itself. This goes into the analysis that goes into the MET, not MET, and not MET for 2 years. Again, the California way is finding the balance. How do we support LEAs? Use a common language so that we all are on the same page, not just amongst our regions, but also when we're working with across regions and across the state. We want to provide tools so that they know some research-based tools that they're using. And then we also want to make sure that we're keeping the local in local control, that we're validating tools that they may already be using that they're finding successful. We want to avoid the compliance that I can see creeping in when I start talking to our districts. They want to know, well, what can I do to comply? And we're talking about an improvement model. So it's a change of perspective and a change of paradigm for us and for our districts as well. So I'm going to hand this over to Jeanette, and she's going to delve into Priority 2, which is standards.
Yes, thank you. So I want you to think back for a minute. 2014, when this all just came about, and priority 2, implementation of state standards. And I don't know if you were in your current seat or if you were in a district at the time, and the thought of trying to measure implementation of state standards. I want you to take 30 seconds and talk to your table about what that looked like in 2014 and what that looked like in 2015. All right. So if you were like me, I couldn't wait till CDE came out with a tool. What in the world? How are we supposed to? Well, it's local. Remember, it's local. Oh yeah. So anyway, I digress. So we'll take an in-depth look at the self-reflection tool for priority 2 implementation of state standards and the tools that we have to work with then to reflect that. So let's take a deeper look. All right, we're going to go through the standard and the evidence, and of course the criteria then is going to be that met, not met, or not met for 2 or more years. And again, what Kathy said, that met is determined by if you follow the process. So again, not how you did on the tool that you used, but did you follow the process? So again, let's dig in. So the standard, go ahead. So the LEA will annually measure its progress implementing state academic standards. So the frequency there is annually. The indicator is indicator content, of course, is the 10 standards that we have. Not just the Common Core standards, but all 10 of those there that you see in the green box. And reports the results to the local governing board at a regularly scheduled meeting of the local governing board and the stakeholders and the public through the evaluation rubrics or through the dashboard, what we're now calling the dashboard. Okay. All right, for your evidence, LEA measures its progress using the self-reflection tool, which we're going to go through here in just a minute. Included in the evaluation rubrics, web-based user interface, and reports the results to the local governing board. And then that last part, through the local data selection option, or what we're calling the dashboard. And so I just put a little example of, and again, what Cindy said, we'll all get to see what the actual dashboard looks like soon enough. I put a fictional rendering of what it might look like and what we've gotten peeks at before, but I guess we'll see soon what that's really going to look like. All right, so getting to MET for priority 2, again, it's did we follow the process? So did we do it annually? Measuring the progress, the implementation of state standards. Did we report it to the governing board at a regularly scheduled public meeting? And then with our stakeholders, using one of the 2 tools. So right now we're going to dive into what those tools, those 2 options are. So for priority 2, implementation of state standards, the first one is just, it has a blank narrative box. And it wants you to make sure that you address three things here. So first is to identify the locally selected measures. So if you have a measure that you're already using, or that your districts are using and want to continue that, that's absolutely fine. They can continue using that tool. They just need to tell what they're using, why they chose that tool, and then give a summary of how they are doing with that implementation. So what we did was we did an example of what that might look like. So your goldenrod handout, if you'll take right behind the 5x5 grid that we just did with the academic indicator. So this is an example of what option 1 might look like. Okay, the empty box I filled in. So again, number 1 was identifying what measure you used. Number 2 was why you chose it. And number 3, then summarizing how you're doing. So I want you to take a minute, take 1 minute to read through what that looks like with that sample, and it's on the back as well. So for this example, in Butte County, we really grappled with how to support our districts with measuring their implementation of state standards. And so some colleagues and I got together and developed some rubrics for math, ELA, and then in general for any of the standards that you're implementing. And so our districts, some of our districts have been using this in the past 3 years to then work with their teaching staff and actually gather the input from teaching staff and their schools. Where are we in this process, and what's our next step? Where are we going next? So it's a real authentic measure of where we are in the classroom of implementing Common Core. And so that's what I used here. I've got examples of those rubrics if you want to see them, and we'll give you access to them as well. So that's option 1, is they have to write a narrative of how they're doing, and they have to have a tool that they're actually using. Okay? Example 2, or option 2, is on the blue handout. And I'm going to give you a minute now to just look at this blue handout. And in fact, I'm gonna have you hold off for a minute because I'm gonna give you a prompt. And what I want you to do is compare the 2 options that you're gonna have to present to your districts. And I want you to compare those 2 options and really start thinking about what's going to gather some authentic, real feedback about how they're doing in implementation of Common Core, and then how to take them to the next step. So go to the next slide, if you will. So if you'll read the prompts here, and then I also have a Padlet, but I want you to really take some time to compare and talk at your tables about what's going to happen when a district actually has to choose one of these. What might be their go-to, if you kind of know what I mean. I don't know, you guys aren't with me? Okay, some of you are. And what it's going to mean. Now, with the blue one, it says an LEA is to fill that out. It doesn't give any description of what that LEA. Best practices might be that you would gather a leadership group of teachers and administrators in the room to fill out that blue sheet together, but it doesn't really define what that might look like. We would suggest that they do something like that. But again, take some time at your tables. I want you to talk about and compare the 2 different options. And then, if you would, give some ideas on the Padlet about how we can encourage our districts to really be authentic in this process, because that's what we're really after, is really supporting our districts to truly implement the state standards. So I'm going to give you some time now to compare, talk at your tables, and then reflect into the Padlet. Thank you. At the end of Kathy and I's presentation, I'm going to give you the links that will take you to some of the tools that were submitted. Butte County's done, like I said, we mentioned some, but San Juan has a nice rubric. PTA, of course, has done the nice community engagement. The other thing the question that kept coming up, on the dashboard, we're not going to have to, this is our evidence the two different options, those are our evidence for having gone through the process. On the dashboard, we'll just put met, not met, not met for 2 or more years. So again, those tools and the options, go ahead.
Just to clarify, in response to our conversation, option 1 is really just saying, if the district has their own list,
Right,
what is it? It could be the one you presented to us, it could be another one.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, did you hear that? So that option 1 is just a narrative. I just put an example in there, but whatever the district is using is fine. If they have something that they're using, that's fine. I just gave you an example. Okay, so the first one is just a narrative box. The second one is the checklist. And at the end of that checklist, there is a narrative box in case you want to fill that out. It's not required, okay, for a district. And those are your evidence, and then you will reflect on the dashboard whether you met, not met for 2 or more years. Okay? I don't want to take any more time right now, but let's move on to priority 3, and then we can revisit questions if we need to.
So priority 3 is our parental involvement. And I think that the way that the local indicators are evaluated shows that this is so critical for us to be successful in using local indicators. If you don't have a robust stakeholder group providing input through your teachers, through your community, through your parental involvement, then the LEA becomes simply maybe a superintendent and a group of people that are insulated from what's really happening. So working with districts to help them increase their parental participation and their stakeholder participation is critical. In priority 3, again, we're looking at the same standards, evidence, and criteria. How often do we do this? What is the indicator content? What is the accountability, transparency involved? And what is the tool that we're actually using? Parental involvement, the frequency is annually. We're seeking input from parents in decision-making and promoting parental participation. So have they actually provided input, and are they actually participating in programs at the district? The accountability and transparency is that these results are shared at the local governing board at a regularly scheduled meeting. Again, that's something districts have asked me about. Can we have a special board meeting? Well, read the State Board of Education memo. Let's re-look at that. That is a regularly scheduled meeting of the local governing board and to stakeholders and the public. So there's your accountability, right? You're putting a met, not met, 2 years not met in your dashboard. However, to put that in, you have shared this publicly and received input. And that's why stakeholder input is so important. Again, a checklist here. For those of us who like checklists, did you do it annually? Did you seek input? Did you increase parental participation? Did you report it at a regularly scheduled meeting? Did you have a narrative summary and analysis of climate summary reports results to stakeholders and public through the evaluation rubrics dashboard? Option 1, survey, and option 2 is local measures. So to go into option 1, we're looking at a survey. There's some keywords here that we want to identify. It has to be a local survey given to at least one grade within in each grade span that the LEA serves. K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 are given as examples. And it has to summarize 3 elements. One is that the findings from a survey related to seeking input from parents and guardians. What are the key findings related to promoting, increasing parental participation in programs, and why they selected the survey tool that they're using. If you take out the ivory handout, that is an example of the first half, the top half of that page relates to the State Board of Education memo on this, and the bottom piece is a narrative that would be shared out at a local governing board or with stakeholders that summarizes the findings. In this case, at Shoot for the Stars District, we have information that shows that input was sought, that there was an increase in participation, and that there's a rationale behind why the survey was chosen. If you take out the pink It's actually kind of blush. It's blush. It's a sample survey. This is a family involvement survey. If you know the bottom, this is adapted from the ODE framework for building partnerships. And so this survey was the instrument that was used to generate the summary found on the ivory page. That would all be reported at a local governing board to your stakeholders. However, in your dashboard, what you're going to say is met, or not met for 2 years. For the sake of time, because we want to make sure we stay on track, we're going to go ahead and look at option 2 for priority 3. You'll see a lot of similarity. There are some differences. In this one, you're going to summarize another tool that you might use, not a survey. It could be a rubric, and we'll provide you an example of one that we looked at. One measure related to seeking input from parents and guardians. One measure related to promoting parental participation, and again, the rationale behind why you chose that instrument. If you look at the purple handout and the green handout, the green handout is a tool that we selected to use as an example of a rubric that was put out by the PTA. And we're looking specifically at Standard 5, which is sharing power. The purple handout is the State Board of Education information on the front page. On the back is a sample of a narrative that would be generated after administering the green tool. So we gave that green tool to parents. We evaluated, because again, we are still grappling with that definition of the LEA will. Who is the LEA? So hopefully you're involving many stakeholders. You summarize that finding, report it at a board meeting, report it to your stakeholders, and then on your dashboard you're going to enter, did you meet the criteria, did you not meet, or did you not meet for 2 years? So if we had time, and this is something that I think is important, when I've done a similar exercise with my districts, a lot of discussion takes place. They grapple with the idea that if I'm not making progress on increasing parental participation, how can I possibly meet that criteria? And again, going back to, this isn't a punishment, this is a continuous improvement model. And so if you didn't improve, how are you going to improve? You've met the criteria that you've engaged in the exercise. And so it alleviated some concern and some anxiety. And again, it's a new system for them. I would encourage this discussion when you roll this out to districts and regional levels. And I think our last one, we want to make sure we give you access to all the tools that we were looking at to use for 2 and 3.
So the top link up there is the shared resource that Judy has put together. And again, if you have surveys or rubrics, something that you would like to share with others, I think this would be a great place that we could have resources for our districts and that we could give out to our districts. So some of those things will be in there. The Butte County, I just wanted to give you a link to the live binder that we have at Butte County that has the ones that we put together. And just so you had that. And there is an activity, I didn't have time to do it today, but there is an activity that goes with the rubrics that we have put together to create a more authentic, sometimes when you're just given a rubric to look at, teachers will go, yeah, I think I'm here, here, and here. But if you actually have them do that activity, it helps them to digest exactly what it means to implement and where they might be in that continuum. So again, those resources are on our website, and just contact me if you want some direction or some help with that.